Okay, so once again, this class is recorded for the purpose of uh, for those who are not able to attend this class, so they have a copy of this discussion. So by the way, our topic for today is about Java language issues, no, subclass, subtypes, generic exception, and assertion in others. So when we say subclasses, it allow one to reuse the code inside classes. So both instance variable declarations and method definition. So thus they are useful in supporting code reuse inside a class. Subtyping, on the other hand, is useful in supporting reuse externally, giving rise to a form of polymorphism. So when we say a subtype of a given type is a combination of the type, no, a constant of values on the type in certain attributes specific to the subtype. Now, the given type is called the type of the subtype, and the set values of a subtype consists of the values of each type that is satisfies constraint and any exclusion of null value. Okay, to give us more idea, no, about our topic for today. So let us all welcome Sir Nunez. Go ahead.
Ah, okay po. Nadidinig naman po ako, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, copy po. So, first of all, good morning, Dr. Abante, sir. Good morning, classmates. My name is Francis, and I'll be your presenter for today. And my topic is all about Java language issues, subclass, subtypes, generics, exceptions, assertions, and etc. So, before I begin, with my topic, I would like to introduce more about Java and why it is called object-oriented programming language. So Java is an object-oriented programming language. I know for a fact that all of us here already know that. But Java supports the following fundamental concepts. Uh, e- Example, it supports polymorphism, inheritance, encapsulation, abstraction, classes, objects, instance, method, and message passing. So all of these concepts are considered to be supported by Java. So that is why it's called object-oriented programming language. And from the given list down here, as you can see, we have items there with asterisks. The reason for that is because some of these items are incorporated to my or will be discussed in a way in my topic. Like for example, polymorphism and inheritance. These are always associated with subclass. Okay, so polymorphism is it is called polymorphism because it takes many forms. Like for example, when creating subclass, we tend to inherit. As you can see, inheritance, it tends to inherit attributes and features from a class, and we can actually create different subclasses based from that class. So it can be called also as polymorphism. Okay. So in my topic, I will also going to discuss about classes and object. And the reason for that is because it's going to be I think it's going to be very hard to discuss subclass without creating programs uh, with the use of classes. Okay, and of course instance and methods. Okay, so classes and objects, I believe we already know about object and classes, and we have a previous presenter before who already gave us an insight about object and classes, and of course our Sir Abante already discussed about this. But again, for the purpose of as a refresher for most of us, uh, well, we're going to have a little bit more discussion about object and classes. Okay, so objects have states and behavior. So I know you already know about this, but if we're going to give an example based from a real world, so and if we take a look around us, we can see a lot of objects. Like for example, we can see like tables, computers, cars, dogs, cats, humans. Okay, from our previous presenter, I believe she used robots or robot as an example. So objects have different states and behavior. So if we are to compare some real world object from software objects, they have this very similar characteristics. Okay, so software objects also have state and behavior. Okay, so a software object states is stored in fields and behavior is shown via methods. Okay, so what is a class? A class can be defined as template, or rather, for the common terminology or name we use to define a class, it is a blueprint that describes behavior and state that the object of its type support. Okay, so to make it more simple, in a class we tend to declare variables and methods. So when we talk about class, we're dealing about variables and methods. Okay, so from my discussion, I'm going to create a program based from an example taken from one of our subjects, advanced database. So as you can see here, we have, the evolution of data models, which discuss about inheritance. Okay, so I'm going to use this example. Uh, my intention for that is for us to see the relationships of our different subjects in this yung masteral natin. So basically, we will be able to see the relationships of our different subjects from each other. Like for example, like SAD, and then we have database. So both subjects are very much related. Okay, so I'm going to use uh, this example. Like for example, we have here customer and employee can be created as subclass from the class person. So I'm going to use this example. Okay, para it will be like more clearer for us. Okay, so I'm going to use person, and a person can have different attributes, like for example last name, first name, middle name, and then eventually we're going to create a subclass customer that inherits these attributes but with an additional feature. Okay, so well, an addition, depending on our approach or technique, as being programmers, I know that we have our different approach or different techniques. I think it's very obvious for us. For some programmers, they tend to use classes, like for example, if they are about to create a program or class, some of us creates different files for different classes. Okay, while others use a single class file for the rest of the program. So I might be able to show you this, different approach, but I prefer to use in this discussion a one file for the whole program, so we will be able to see the flow of the program. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project. So I'm going to name this as class example person. Create new class. So again, some of you might say, "Oh, alam na namin yan." Opo, the reason why I'm trying to discuss class first because eventually I'm going to discuss about subclass. Okay. So main, full package, the class. Wait lang. Okay, no class. Wait, name this as person. Tapos, class. Finish. Okay, so I have here a class. So basically, as I've said earlier, class is all about the declaration of variables and methods. Now, for my given example, I'm going to use person with the different attributes. Like, for example, I'm going to declare a variable, last name, L name for last name, uh, F name for first name, and middle name, M name for middle name. Okay, and then afterwards, I'm going to use a method, right, to display uh, uh, information about the last name, first name, and middle name. So void person attributes. Okay, and then I'm going to uh, display. So actually, I'm going to use a uh, simple, simple example for us to clearly understand. First name, sorry. This is name, F name, first name, and then sys out M name or middle name. Okay, so I'm done with my class person. So I have here variables, last name, first name, middle name, and I intend to display these strings just beside the value of our variable. But since I don't have any method or main method yet, so this information won't be displayed. So the next step is for us to add a main method or a main class and click public static. Okay, so when we click public static, or when we add check to the public static void main string, so it added these lines of codes. It means when we press the run button, all of the codes here will be executed and then be displayed in our console. So since I have a person class here, so I'm going to create a new object based from that class. So person p is equals to new person. Okay, so after that, I'm going to use the p object which we have created dot. So again, I know for a fact that you already know about this. So I have here the variables that uh, we put inside our person class, and then we have the methods. Okay, so this time I'm going to use those variables. P dot L name is equals to yes. P dot first name is equals to Francis, and then P dot middle name equals to Man. And then after that, I'm going to use the method that we have created in the person class. So P dot person attribute. Okay. So if we're going to run the program, so we should be able to display successfully, the information about the person. So that is for the subclass. Okay. So right now, we're going to proceed with the subclass. So what is subclasses, right? So subclass is an important concept in object-oriented programming is inheritance. Okay, so inheritance means we tend to use the features or the attributes from a class and use those codes again to a different class. So that's inheritance. Okay, so programmers tend to use subclass to make it easier for them to write down code. So they don't have to write or to spend more time in writing codes. Okay, as the name suggests, an object is able to inherit characteristics from other or from another object. In more concrete terms, an object is able to pass uh, on its state and behaviors to its children. From inheritance to work, the object needs to have characteristics in common with each other. Okay, so basically, we've been hearing terms like class, parent, child. So I have here a list of terms or different names that we tend to use to call the class. So for example, I have the class can be also be called as parent class, base class, or superclass. While on the other hand, subclasses can also be called as child, derived class, and subclass. Okay, so for this example, I'm still going to use the first example that we did use. And this time, I'm going to create a subclass to inherit some of the features from our person class. But this time, we're going to add different or additional feature for that. Because, you know, uh, if we tend to use subclass, there's this one concept that we have to remember. The child class is a more specialized version of the parent. Meaning to say, there should be an additional feature or attributes or methods if you are trying to inherit something from a class. Okay, so of course we don't tend to, like for example, create a subclass and inherit all the features, all or inherit all the same or the features from a class, and then not adding any additional feature. Okay, so that's the purpose of using subclass. We tend to use subclass to add more feature. Okay, so again, I have here two files to represent my main class, and then the main class, and then I have here a class. So uh, please allow me to create a new file, but this time I'm going to use a single file. So main method, create new project. Okay, so this time I'm going to create only one file. So I'm just going to copy some of the codes here to make for us not to waste time. Okay, so with this kind of approach, one file, so we're like simply going to, okay, so we are going to create a class here, class person. Okay, so the idea of this is I'm going to merge this two or the codes from these two files into one for us to see clearly what I'm talking about. The idea of using subclass. Okay, so class person. So for example, I'm just going to copy this from our previous example. So class person. Okay, and so here is going to copy this. Okay, for us to to be able to see the entire code or the entire program in one uh, class. Word. So basically, we have there our this is like our class here, class person, Okay, and then what I'm going to do is create a, based from our previous example, person P is equals to new person. Okay, and then so I think, right, so okay, and then as like what we did earlier, copying ko na nga lang po. Hindi po. Okay. So this is what we did earlier. So I'm just going to incorporate all of them in one file. Okay. So there you go. So if you run the program, okay, sorry. This word class. There you go. So as you can see, I used only one file for this example, and I have here, I didn't use another file for my class person right here. So for us to clearly see the whole program in one screen. Okay. So uh, we have successfully created a class. So this time we're going to use or to create a subclass. So I'm what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another class, but this time, all right. So employee, all right. So I have an employee there. For us to be able to inherit attributes from this class right over here, so we're simply going to add in this class the extends keyword. Okay. So when we type in the extend keywords, meaning to say, our intention is to inherit all of these into another or different class. Okay, so extend, and then we're simply going to type in the name of the class where we want to inherit, and that's it. So right now, as you can see, we don't have any codes written down in this employee class, but since we use the extend keyword, we are already inheriting all of these. So to justify that, I'm going to create a new object. So employee E is equals to new employee. All right. So down here, okay. So down here, I'm going to use the newly created object E dot right there. So as you can see, we don't have anything written yet on our employee class, and yet we have like able to gain access to the variables. We have gain access from the variables that we have written in our class person. So this is very para siyang very cool because we don't have any codes yet, but still we should be able to write a code based from this class which inherits attributes or features from this class. So for example, uh, e dot lname is equals to example, yes, e dot first name example in e dot middle name is equals to Legaspi, right? And then uh, e dot uh, person. So as you can see, even methods, we can inherit methods from different class and use it in this class. So if we run this program, okay, so we should be able to display different information based from the variables and methods that we inherit from class person. Okay, so that's how subclass works. But Again, as I've said earlier, uh, a subclass is a specialized version. All right. It means it has an added feature. So what we're going to do, since this is this employee, so uh, an employee has an employee number, EMP, no, right? Well, the person, might, kung hindi siya nagtatrabaho, he doesn't have an employee number. So there you go. So I'm going to create a method this time for the employee. For example, employee attribute. Okay. So sys out. So employee number. Okay. And then we're going to add that method here. Emp attribute. And of course, emp no integer is equals to 1 to 2. Okay. So after we run the program, as you can see right here, you can see the difference from the two classes. So we have here the person class, and we have the employee class. So as you can see, they have similar features, but with the subclass, we added an additional feature right here. So this is how subclass works. Okay. So I do hope it's clear for us. So all right. So let's now proceed with,
Sir, excuse me.
yes po.
Can you make this little bigger yung font kapag nasa Java ka po?
Ay, sige po.
Okay, later. Ha, thank you.
Okay po, FI po. Ano ko na lang po yung resolution. Sorry. Okay na po yan, sir.
Yes, okay. At least there's an adjustment.
Okay. So, ayun po, no? So, we already created how subclasses works. Okay, so again, we have successfully inherited some of the features from a class person and use it in this class and add an additional feature. Okay, so based from my discussion or my reference earlier, a subclass is a specialized version of a class. So we have your class person and a employee class which inherits features or attributes from our class person. Okay, so let's proceed with the issues. Okay, issues of subclass. So number one, speed issues. Inherited function works slower than normal functions as there is indirection. So based from our first issue, if we tend to use subclass, there is an indirection. What do you mean by that? So for all we know, all right. So lines of codes in our programs are being executed in a downward flow. Okay, so each lines right here are being executed in a downward direction. Okay, so in this case, since we are using features or attributes and methods based from these classes, so as you can see, so for example, if we're going to run this program, this line will be executed, but instead of going downward or going to these lines, it will uh, moves its focus to these lines. Okay, so clearly there's an indirection. It's not moving in just one flow or direction. Okay, in that case, uh, our programs will run a bit slower. Well, in these days, we won't be able to feel that because how in computers, yung mga specs ng computers are very fast, but we won't be able to feel that in this simple program. Okay, but if we are to create a huge project, okay, so like for example, if you're going to create database and that table is filled with a lot of information, we will definitely feel how our system becomes smaller because of those information. And if we're tend to, or if we're going to use a lot of subclasses, definitely it will make our program works a little bit slower. All right, so that's our first issue. Update of codes issues. All right, inheritance increase the coupling between base class and derived class, or the class and the subclass. A change in base class will affect all child classes. So that's pretty obvious and self-explanatory, right? So since we are like for example, in this case, we only have one uh, subclass that inherits features from this class. So any changes from the subclass or the parent will,
Gagawin ko na to sa series. Pero yung pera, yung
okay pa. So any changes in our class person will definitely take effect for the rest of the subclass that inherits
14.8 ka
from that
lang.
class person.
Ang pasaan, 14.9.
Okay pa. So ayun. So like for example, this is a simple example, but definitely it will give you what's the issue is talking about. For example, I'm going to change something here from our variable. As you can see, it will take effect from all the classes, especially right here. You know, uh, it will take effect. The changes that we made there will take effect from the rest of the program. So that is one of the issues there, and for that reason, uh, it uh, it's going to like take a lot of time for us, to change any codes, right, that inherits from that class to be updated. Considering if we are creating or developing a huge project. So that's another issue for the subclass. Next one is often data members in the base class are left unused, which may lead to memory wastage. Okay, so I know from our computer architecture subjects during college, we discussed how we store memories or how we store data or information in a computer memory. Now, in programming, whenever we declare uh, new variables, right? Those variables are are definitely they're going to occupy space from our computer. Okay, so like for example, I'm going to add another class here, right? Just to justify that issue, like class customer. So I'm going to add in customer and the customer number, and then void customer or customer attribute, and I have here plus customer number. Okay, like for example, if I were to display this time the customer, so I'm going to inherit as well from our class. So I'm going to type in extends from the person class all its attributes. So I'm going to type in uh, customer C is equals to new customer. Right. So for example, I'm just going to use this one. And I'm going to that one customer, and then customer dot customer attribute. First, I'm going to add in the C dot customer number is equals to 4. There you go. Okay, so M name. Yeah, so basically we changed this one. So there you go. That clearly show you guys the exact definition why it using subclass, sometimes when you change something from the class, it will take effect for the rest of the program. Okay, so run this program. See. Okay, so let's say, for example, I would like to display only the customer's information. Okay, so we have successfully uh, this we have successfully displayed the information of our customer. All right. So the thing is, uh, again, since we're talking about memory wastage right here. So since all of these variables are already inside of our computer's memory, all right, and in this function right now, I'm trying to display only the customer. So this one. So like for example, the employee number right here is inside of our computer's memory right now, and it's not being used as of the moment. So meaning to say, we are like we wasted uh, memory already for storing that variable. Okay, so based from this example, this is is a very small program. Okay, we can barely feel that, but try to imagine we're working with a huge project with a lot of variables. We can just imagine uh, those unused variables are stored in a computer's memory and are being wasted. Okay, so those are the issues of subclass. Okay po, so I hope that is clear. All right, so let's proceed with generics. Okay, so uh, generics are a facility of generic programming that were added to the Java programming language in 2004 version J2SE 5.0. Okay, they were designed to extend Java's type system to allow a type or method to operate on objects of various types while providing compile time type safety. So I would like to give an emphasis on time type safety. Type safety. So that's the reason why they inserted this feature in Java. Okay, so when we talk about type safety, we're trying to refer for the different types of variables. Okay, so generic methods. You can write a single generic method declaration that can be called with arguments of different types based on the types of arguments passed to the generic method. The compiler handles each method calls appropriately. Following are the rules to define generic methods. All generic method declarations have type parameter section delimited by angle brackets that precedes the method's return type. So from the most common type declaration that are being used are they tend to use T. Okay, so actually, uh, based from my research, you can use whatever character you want to put there. So, well, each type parameter section contains one or more type parameters separated by commas. A type parameter, also known as a type variable, is an identifier that specifies a generic type name. The type parameters can be used to declare the return type and act as placeholders for the type of arguments. Arguments passed to the generic method, which are known as actual type arguments. So, for the purpose of the reason why we tend to use generics is uh, for us to create a generic type of variables that we can use. For example, for the purpose of if we are trying to shorten our codes, and in that codes we have different variables, so we can use generics for that. Okay, so let me demonstrate. New class. So I'm going to name this generics. Okay, so sorry. And to create new project. Sorry. generics. Low class, main. Okay. So in this example, I'm going to use array. Okay. So for us to clearly see how generic works. Okay. So let's say, for example, I have an array, an integer. All right. Uh, int brackets to show we're going to use array, for example, number. So is equals to, so we're just going to specify numbers 2 and 3. Okay. So I know also that array very well. So we have a previous discussion, right, about array. So for example, I would like to display uh, certain item from that array. So for example, num, we just have to specify the specific index of that element, right? So we have here our variable, and these are the elements inside of our array, and we have 0, 1, 2 as index. So for example, we want to display the second element, or the third, 0, 1, 2. So if you tend to run, we're going to run the program. So we have successfully. So very simple. So let's say, for example, we're going to display all the elements from that array. So we're going to create a method, public static void. So I'm going to use the type of variable here, integer, and then we have the brackets, and then I'm going to use a list. Okay, so for us to be able to display the list of elements inside of that array. Public void. I forgot to write down the name. Okay. So print. So in order for us to go through these elements inside of array, and of course we're going to use a looping statement. All right. So I'm going to use for int. For example, number. For int number list. Okay. So sys out n. Okay, so basically, we just created a new variable here that will place all the elements in our list, num, over there. So I'm going to remove this one and then call the method print num. Okay, so run our programs. So as you can see, we have successfully displayed the entire elements inside of our array. So I know that you already know this. Okay, so let's say, for example, we want to add a new array, this time a string type. Okay, and we're going to call this, for example, toys, or letters na lang. Letters is equals to, okay, so for example, A, B, and C. Right, so we have two different arrays right here. So we have first one is, it has an integer type, and this time, and this uh, another array is made up of letter. Right, so again, if we want to display that all of those elements, we're just going to use the same idea, public static void print. So this time I'm going to write inside of our uh, argument here, string. Right, again, we're going to use list for, okay, for string s list sys out S. Okay. So I'm going to print it now. Print letter. All right. So run the program. So as you can see, we are able to display both of those uh, array, okay, all of their elements in our console. So uh, we haven't had anything about generics yet. Okay, so here we go. Uh, say if you want to create a single method that will display both of these arrays, right? As you can see, both of these arrays have different types of variables. So first one we have integer, and the other one is string. So different type of variable. So string is all about type safety. Okay, so if we are to display these elements from two different types of variable, okay, we can use this time array generics. Okay, so for us to create generics for this, again, we're going to create a method public static void print. Okay, now this time uh, we are not allowed to use any specific types from the variables that we've discussed right here, because we're going to use a single method for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a generic type of variable. Generic. So palagay ko alam naman po natin yung ibig sabihin ng generic. Right? So for us to do that, we're simply going to place angle brackets t in here to replace, you know, or for us to create a generic type of variable. And then instead of using the variables or the type of variables we used earlier, for example, the int and string, this time, okay, so we're going to use t, all right, and then the brackets, and again the list, okay, and then the looping statement. So same lang po yung idea, pero we replaced the specific types of variable here, the integer and string, into t. Okay. So t, for example, no variable, for example, a, and then sys out a. Okay. So right there. So sorry. So there you go. These lines of code should be able to display uh, both the elements of our two different arrays, the num and the letter. All right. But as you can see right now, this one is being highlighted. It means we have an error. So let's run program. So exception in thread main arguments int. All right. Java 8. So line 8. This one. Okay, so this will display, I'm sorry, this will actually, it is showing us one of the issues of using generics. Okay, so let me just show you that right here. So issues of generics. Generics don't work with primitive types. So primitive types, meaning to say we're talking about types of variables. So for us to define primitive types of variables, these are types of variables that when we type it in our Java or for example Eclipse, all right, it turned into purple. So meaning to say if you are to declare a variable and you used a primitive type, it should turn into purple. And this one, this is our primitive type, and this is our object type of variable, so string. So as you can see right now, we are encountering errors based on this primitive type. Okay, so issues, that is one of the issues of using generics. So in order for us to solve this, we're simply going to create an object type of variable as well, just like a string. So if we run our program, so there you go. So we are able to display these two arrays having two different types of variable, and merging it into one single method that doesn't have or doesn't contain any specific or the usual variables that we tend to use. Like for example, the string, integer, double, or float. Okay, we used generics. Okay, so issues of generics. So you already saw with the first issue, generics don't work with primitive types. Okay, so you cannot create generic arrays for arrays in Java generics, of course. So that is very self-explanatory. Actually, both of these issues right here are very self-explanatory because we are using generic types of variables. So hindi siya yung common variable natin. Like for example, it's not a common variable that we can that we can use, for example, in declaring a number or a string. So it is very impossible to create, like for example, t. For example, I'm going to create an array using a generic type. For example, again, number or number two is equals to, for example, 5, 6, 7. So that's it. As you can see, uh, it's giving us an error. So basically, it is not generic type is not the same with with primitive types and object type of variable. So uh, that won't allow us to create generic arrays. And also, since it is not a the usual or the typical type of variable, we can also allow generics won't allow declaring static member to be used as type parameter as well. Just like how we use uh, you know uh, the usual type of variables. Okay, so I do hope maliwanag po yun. Right. Next, exceptions. Okay, so exceptions or exceptional event. So it's a problem that arises during the execution of a program. Actually, Dr. Abante already had an introduction about this. Okay, so when an exemption occurs, the normal flow of the program is disrupted. All right, or our program terminates, and what is left for our user is the exception written in red font here, and it makes our program uh, you know ugly because of those errors. So in order for us to avoid that, we can use exceptions. Okay, so application terminates abnormally, which is not recommended. Therefore, these exceptions are to be handled. Okay, so what causes those exceptions? So for example, an exception can occur for many different reasons. Following are some scenarios where an exception occurs. Number one, user has entered an invalid data. So that is one of our problems. Uh, since we are the one who's developing the program, we know for a fact what to encode or type in if our program asks for an input. Now that will be different from our client or users. Sometimes you ask for a number, they might accidentally type in, for example, character or string. Okay, it's like these are beyond our control. Okay, user entering an invalid data. All right. Next is we have a file that needs to be opened, cannot be found. All right. Uh, a network connection has been lost in the middle of communication, or the JVM has run out of memory. So as you can see, Java, it's very important for us, the proper handling of memory. All right, just like what we have discussed with subclass. Okay, so it is very important for uh, Java. Okay, run out of memory. So some of these exceptions are caused by user errors, others by programmers. So this is like uh, this gets my or this should get our attention. Our program, parang okay lang yung magka-error po yung program natin if like for user error. Pero pag programmer's error, medyo hindi ata magandang tingnan. So, all right, so we can use exceptions for that and other physical resources that have failed. Okay, so start po tayo. right? So simple again po, simple mga simple lang po yung examples ko for us to understand it more clearly. So for example, exceptions is new class. Okay, let this in. It's not in. All right. So in this example, I'm simply going to ask for an input from our user. And then from there, we're going to display how exception works. Okay, so I'm going to declare a scanner. Scanner enter is equals to new scanner. Sorry. System dot in. Oops, sorry. And going to import scanner. int num and then sys out. Kindly enter a number. Num is equals to enter dot next or next int. Okay, so this is a simple program that will demonstrate how exception works. So kindly enter a number. All right. So if we are the programmer, we know that a user should input or enter a number, right? So basically, that's what the instruction is telling us. But like for example, if we're going to enter a number, so okay, our program doesn't like created an error there. So, but for example, I'm your user and I accidentally type something here, enter. So we're going to encounter an error exception, so which clearly disrupts our program. So we can avoid this, of course, by using try catch. So our previous presenter also already uh, gave an insight about this try catch, and then of course basic system out. Example, that is not a number. Okay, so for example, R, that is not a number. So actually, what happened here is we caught the error, and instead of seeing red lines here with technical terms in it, uh, we are able to display a little bit more, display a message that is a little bit more understandable by our user. Okay, so that is not a number. Okay, so that's how exception works. Okay, so basically, when I was like reading this definition, medyo nakot po yung attention ko po talaga dito sa programmer error na to. So, uh, hindi dapat kasi mangyari po sa atin yon na yung po pwede yung errors po may be committed by our user or physical resources, but not the programmer. Okay, kasi we're the one who developed that program. So we are able to catch some errors or that error by using try catch. Okay, so issues. Okay, we have two types of exceptions. We have checked exception and unchecked exceptions. Okay, so exception represents invalid conditions in areas outside the immediate control of the program. For example, invalid user input, database problems, network outages, absence of files. There is subclasses or of exceptions, but not runtime exception, and must be caught using a try-catch statement or must be declared in a throws clause in the method where the exception might occur. The later option passes the checked exception to the method's caller. And the next exception is unchecked exception represents the represent the, the represent defects in the program or bugs, often invalid arguments to a method To quote from the Java programming language by Gosling, Arnold, and Holmes, unchecked runtime exceptions represents conditions that, generally speaking, reflect errors in your program's logic. Yun. So ito po yung medyo kailangan nating as this is one of the concerns for us programmers, yeah, of course, medyo yung coding, kung magaling tayo sa coding, pero pagdating sa logic, medyo may problema. Some of those errors can be uh, raised by, program logic or error in your program's logic. Okay, recovered from at runtime are subclasses of runtime exception and are usually implemented using illegal argument exception, null pointer exception, or illegal state exception, and are not required to be caught by a try-catch statement and are not required to be declared by a throws clause. This is where the issues for exceptions. Okay, so there has been debates on whether it is more desirable to use check or uncheck exception. Using check exception, programmers have to declare exceptions that each method may throw and tend to provide more detailed documentation of the behavior of the program. So I think this is one of the issues there of using exception. So it will be an additional task for us being programmer to create more detailed documentation on how our programs will behave. So that is one issue. However, when not used correctly, checked exception can lead to some programming problems and difficulties, especially for large projects. Using unchecked exception, programmers do not declare any specific exception, but may still throw exception. This can lead to problems and difficulties for user of the classes and methods due to the lack of information about program behaviors. Okay, so basically, one of the issues there is, I think this one is a problem that can lead to problems and difficulties. Okay, so because palagay ko alam naman po natin, some of us, all right, so for example, I'm going to return this one. Okay. Okay, so basically, for example, some of us, I know for a fact, during our college days, we tend to play safe a lot during our programs. So in this case, for example, uh, hindi naman, it is not clear, really clear, what the error is all about, right? Pero since alam natin na tayo yung gumawa ng program, alam natin na nagkaroon ng invalid user input. Okay, so during our college days, we tend to be safe most of the time. So instead of having this in our program, we use try catch na lang, try to be safe. Okay, but also there are a lot of errors or exemptions that doesn't clearly display what the error is all about. So the programmers tend to use try catch. Okay, so I think that is one of the issue there. Programmers really they some of the programmers doesn't really take care of the problem. They just used a safe solution to avoid that error from happening. Pero hindi naman talaga natutumbok yung problem. So that is one of the issues of using exceptions. Okay po. Right. Next is we have assertions. Okay. So assertions is a statement in Java which ensures the correctness of any assumption. So assumptions. So ibig sabihin assume. Okay. So ensures the correctness of any assumptions which have been done in the program. When assertion is executed, it is assumed to be true. So basically, when we use assertion, we tend to use Boolean type of variables. Okay. If the assertion is false, the JVM will throw an assertion error. It finds its application primarily in the testing purposes. So we can use assertion for testing our programs for errors. So that's the main purpose of assertion, for testing. So that is why assertion are disabled by default in Java. Okay? Kasi yun nga po, for the purpose of testing na siya. And we can remove that assertion after we check our programs for errors. And we can disable the assertion feature of Java. Assertions in Java can be done with the help of assert keyword. There are two ways in which an assert statement can be used. So first way, we have assert expression. Second way is assert expression 1 and expression 2. So let's create a new project. Example, assert. So main finish. Again, this time, I'm going to use my example with exception. Right, this one. Okay. So based from our previous exercises kanina, so we all know that if a user inputs an invalid, or if the user entered an invalid input, like for example, in this program, we're going to expect that the user will enter a number, but there is a possibility that a user might commit an input error, or an error in entering data or information from this program. So in that case, for us to test, pero alam naman natin na mag-error to, pero just in case, we can pretend that this is part of a huge project. So we all know that that will make an error if a user inputs a different type of variable or data, right, from what we are expecting. Okay, so in that case, all right, so since ito nga po medyo for some exceptions, hindi naman talaga detailed yung binibigay nilang explanation about the error. All right. So with the use of assertion, we can like some sort of create our own error message. Right. So for the purpose of during testing, we will be able to know what's the error is all about. Okay. So we're simply going to use assert. Okay. I'm going to use the two expression. Assert enter dot. So enter is the variable for our scanner, has int, has next, sorry, has next int. Yeah. So this line of code here actually is sorry again, that has next int. Right. This line of code here is checking for the input. It should have it should have an integer in it during the input. Okay. So if that is true, program will be executed without error. Right. So yun yung boolean part. No. If that is true, by default, this is true. Right. Anyways, yung first expression. So I'm going to add a semicolon to denote the second expression. So just in case, if it's false, right, just in case, we should be able to see this message as part of the error. So wrong, or for example, again, the message natin, that is not a number. Okay. Yan. So if we are to run our program, so enter, for example, G, right? So that is not a number. Okay? So instead of kanina, medyo technical masyado po yung error, right? In this case, uh, based on our created message, so we can tell na, oh, okay, medyo mali yung input here. So alam na natin gagawin. So anyways, by default din niya, Eclipse, by default, disabled yung uh, exemption. So for us to enable the exception, we just have to go sa run configuration and then arguments, and we simply type in dash EA or enabled assertion. Okay, so I think sana po maliwanag po yun. So assertion are being used only for checking. So uh, medyo that's why yun nga po by default naka-disable siya. Okay? So issues of assertion, having assertion all throughout your program can make your codes to run slower. So try to imagine na if for example in a huge project, you will tend to ask for a lot of inputs for our user, and then you're going to place an assert or assertion in every input. So of course, additional lines of codes, especially for assertion, this will check the inputs every time the user will input an information or a data. So that will make our program to run slower. So that's why it has a feature that we can disable or enable assertion in Java. Okay po? So, yun lang po. Salamat po. Thank you po. Hello, sir. Okay na po. Salamat po.